Yes. And computers can wreck themselves. Uh, yeah. Well, the I mean, the computers have power supplies, and the power supplies have transformers. So, you know, most of you have generally, especially with a laptop, you have this power brick that you plug into the wall, and that is yeah. Well, there. I mean, you have a transfer the the things you have to have in the power brick are you need a transformer to reduce the voltage. You need a rectifier that is like a we talked about that diode, four diodes to convert AC to DC, and then you need capacitors to smooth it out because you don't want pulsating DC, which is what you get if you just rectify AC. So if somehow that would, if somehow that would destroy something, I don't have a good mechanism for you though. Well, are you a double E major by any chance? Uh huh. Well, if you have wind power, I think what happens in these wind power windmill things is that the the current the generator easily produces AC, but you really at at some arbitrary frequency, depending on how fast the windmill is spinning. So, in order to use that, you probably want to. I don't know this because I've never actually looked into it, but I would assume that the power is converted to DC from the various windmills on the windmill farm, so that you can actually just combine all the windmills and can get the power out of them. Because otherwise, if they're all going at some different rate, um, then I can see you can get into trouble trying to just connect them together. Yeah, well, this is so the um, the United States has my understanding is the United States has three power grids. There's the one is for the East and the Midwest. One is for the Rocky Mountains and the West Coast, and the third one is for Texas. And in these power grids, you have to synchronize. They all have to within a grid. They have to run at the same frequency. All the generators have to run at the same frequency and at the same phase. Because otherwise, you could wind up essentially two generators trying to fight each other. let's say they were 180 degrees out of phase, they would, start fighting each other, which is not what you want. Um, yeah, so starting up a generator is not that's connected to the power grid is not a trivial exercise. You have to get it synchronized or you got problems. So I'm not sure exactly how that's done, but there must be some way to do it. And actually, the country that's actually really messed up in terms of its power distribution is Japan, because basically, when the United States occupied parts of Japan at the end of World War II, um, we pushed the power grid in this that part of Japan to be 115 volts at 60 hertz. And the other part of Japan is 220 volts at 50 hertz. And voltage, the voltage isn't a terribly big problem because you can address it with transformers. But the different frequency between 50 hertz and 60 hertz is a real problem. And when the Fukushima reactor, you remember the Fukushima reactor that got wiped out by a tsunami? So I don't remember whether that was a 50 hertz generator or a 60 hertz, but whatever it was, it only affected half of Japan and not the other half. And the two grids were essentially not connected very well. There was very little capacity to take power from the south and feed it into the demand in the north. So that was a mess. But the way to combine the two is you convert them both to DC, which can be done, but you have to actually do it. And obviously it costs money to set it up. Well, what is the term? Yeah. Well, what I don't know is why the history of this. Why did the United States go to 60 and most of the world to 50? I don't know. Well, I don't know. Well, it's 60 is common in the Caribbean as well, although it depends on whether the island is whether it was a colony or an independent country. That's somewhat. I mean, Canada is pretty much on our thing, our frequent. Canada, I believe, is 60 because we're quite interconnected with Canada. Right. Well, when I was in college, and I think it was in 1965, there was a huge blackout of the northeastern part of the United States and Ontario and Quebec. And the problem actually started in Niagara Falls, Ontario. There was some sort of failure that propagated through the entire Northeast and killed the power. And it started about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which was in November, I believe. It was peak power demand. Um, and so of course, the one consequent well, the power was finally restored most places by early the next morning, but I don't know what had to be done to get it going again, but there was an effort. And the one consequence that I do remember was that 9 months later, the birth rate peaked for a week because there was nothing else to do. Well, seriously, you can probably look it up on Wikipedia, but um, there was no TV, there was no movies, you know, no radio, no nothing. Yeah, right. No, it's not a coincidence. Yeah. No, it's not funny. I mean, okay.